we all kind of came away from there almost deflated, but there was a moment of, nobody could quite pin the word or pin what this feeling was.
Yeah.
And it's altruism. Yeah. And that will live with me forever, that moment and that feeling, not just for the school, but for the teachers, for some of the parents as well who got involved, said, I've never seen my kids so excited. It was incredible. I think I might go into IT now.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Inspired By, with me, your host, Manjit Nija. This week, I've got an amazing guest for you, a lady by the name of Carol Johnson. I know you may think, who's Carol Johnson? I have a whole list of who Carol Johnson is. And Carol Johnson is the IT director of the Telegraph Media Group, or Telegraph newspaper, that's how you recognise it. She's also the founder and the podcast host for Women in Tech, Not Just Code. She's won CIO Award of the Year, I think it was 2018, which is amazing. She's a mentor in various different organisations. So, I mean, what this woman hasn't achieved, I don't know. And we met, it's coming up to 2 years, a year, I think. 2 years. Coming up to 2 years from when we first met. Now, I met Carol at her own event. And at that time, the spotlight was on business analysis. So it was Women in Tech, Not Just Code, which is where I met her. And we kind of just connected. Some sort of affinity between the two of us. Probably because we've both been through the mill when it comes to women in technology. And we just hit it off and we've kept in touch. And we are where we are today. So, Carol, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. And I'm so pleased that we finally get a chance to sit down and catch up and have a good old chinwag. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, good. So am I, because we have tried on several occasions, but then COVID happened, schedules, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'll get into how COVID has impacted you shortly. But before we get on to the amazing person that you are today, where did you start off? Where did you live? What sort of family are you from? Your background, the child? Probably people don't know this about you as much.
Yeah. So came from a hardworking family. I guess you kind of probably say it was a bit of a poor background. My father has a disability. He's deaf. So it's very hard for him to get work. My mum was raising 2 children, dad finding it hard to work. Mum was doing jobs at home, doing all kinds of really weird things, like packing up boxes of cleaning materials, stitching gloves together, anything to be able to earn money from home whilst she was looking after us. Mm-hmm. So it's quite hard times when we were younger. And I learned a lot then about sort of survival, if you like. And I guess having these kind of conversations always gives me a chance to reflect back and go, is that what made me who I am today? And I really do believe that it is, and that's what sort of keeps me propelled going forward. Went to school, hated it. I remember my drama report said something like, "Be nice if Carol turned up." That kind of stuff, because I'm not an academic person. I'm quite creative. I'm much more a visual learner than sitting there sort of learning parrot fashion. I can't do that. I like to do things myself. So I found school quite sort of constraining for me. And of course, in those days, there weren't computers when we were at school.
No, we weren't even allowed calculators, were we?
No, I mean, to think that's a job even at those days is incredible.
Yeah.
So I left school, but because the growing up with always struggling with money, I remember us having food hampers delivered to the house, that kind of thing, getting clothes from jumble sales.
Yeah.
I knew that I had to get a job. I had to work. And it was at the time when the adverts were talking about, the job queues, and unemployment was at like the highest level of 3 million. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not qualified to do anything. I've literally got two O-levels. What can I do? And I just went straight out and thought, well, I'll just try anything. And I got to work in a local authority, which is an eye-opener. And it was a temporary contract for 6 months to cover for somebody who was on maternity leave.
Okay.
But it was an absolutely brilliant job for me because I became what I call the human email. I literally used to deliver messages between departments, running around this massive, building, delivering messages to different departments. I got to learn everybody's name. I got to find out what the roles were. I learned about all the different departments.
You were a networker, really, weren't you?
I know.
Without realising it.
I didn't realise it. And also it's really odd because that's not my thing. I am an introvert. I mean, it doesn't always appear to people that I am now because you can't keep me quiet. But I am an introvert by nature, but I'm quite shy and reserved. And I think, but it was a nice way of being able to have an introduction to somebody without going, hey, this. I just had a job to do, and I built relationships within the company, within the council. And I remember, so I did actually go on a college course. I got day release, which was great, and I was learning about business and communication. And then I learned to touch type, and because we had typewriters in those days, no computers, no.
I remember going on a touch typing course, although I don't do it anymore. I wouldn't even know where to start anymore.
Oh, really? I'm flying at this thing. Although at the time I was still very, very fast with just going like this, and it was, and that was great. And then one day they wheeled into the office this computer. And I was like, wow, this is incredible.
When you say computer, just what was it? What did it look like? It
was big. It was cream. It was on a trolley. It had a green screen. Yeah, I think it was like an IBM thing or something like that. Absolutely huge. And I remember the team sort of were looking at it and literally were terrified to use it. They literally thought they were going to set off a nuclear bomb or something by pressing all the buttons. And I was like, and they said, who wants to have a go? I was like, me. And they said, well, no, you can't. You're too young. I was too young. I was the baby in the department, if you like.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm sure I could do some of this stuff because I'm learning about word processing at college. Maybe it will come along anyway. So I didn't get to use that one, but it did sort of give me a bit of I'm being held back here. I think about it now. I didn't at the time, but I'm being held back here. And at that age, you're always chasing the money, right? So you chase the money, you go for the next job, and admin skills are transferable, etc. So I ended up working in a duty-free company in the buying department. I used to buy. I was in the watches, sunglasses and ready-to-wear department.
Do you know what? I find this so difficult to imagine you doing this stuff. The woman I met and the young lady you're describing is like poles apart. Yeah,
it really is. I don't recognise myself sometimes, and I have forgotten about all this. But and again, it was one. They brought in a computer system there, and I was using WordPerfect 5.1. And then I just had an affinity with it. People say to me, I want to edit something. How do I edit it? And you go, well, you go to the edit menu, which to me was like obvious, but not to everybody.
Yeah.
And I remember getting this magazine, WordPerfect 5.1 for beginners, because how do you learn this stuff? And I really absorbed it. And I used to work with the departments, sort of the IT departments. I'd say, I'm stuck on something here. Can you help me? I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, but I kind of gave the impression I knew something. And they loved it because they were sharing their knowledge, and it's usually guys in those days. And they'd spend hours with me teaching me macros, teaching me, all sorts of bits and pieces. And then I used to borrow the books from them and swat up and stuff like that. But I remember doing this macro that I wrote using this magazine about how to put a nice border around a page. And people were like, how on earth are you doing that? And I thought, people are interested. And because of my creativity, I like doing things. I mean, taking digital photography and making cards and things like that, moving on from scrapbooking for me is just like, wow, I love it. So then I went to the big smoke, went to London, got a job there, and worked for public affairs, public relations, government relations as a secretary, because that was still the job. I wasn't in technology at that point.
Yeah.
And the parent company were bringing in a new computer system. They said, we already had something, but so was anybody interested in maybe becoming a champion for the team? And I said, yeah, me, I'd love to. So I was given that role. I was building Windows computers. I was rolling them out across the office. I was training people how to use the software because I was pretty much the only one who knew how to do all this stuff, and it was a newer version.
Yeah.
So then I wrote my own training courses. We had European offices, so I ended up traveling around the European offices doing their upgrades, doing their training. And then eventually the guy who was the network manager there was moving on, and I was asked if I would take his role. So I was like, yeah, great, brilliant, love to. And it sort of spiraled from there. So I went from being a secretary to doing sort of admin stuff to writing training courses to then being a manager of an office, IT manager of an office. To then I became an IT manager for Europe.
Because before we go any further, now, you know, you and I are from the same era, so to speak, making us sound old, which we're not.
No, we're not.
But, you know, from when we first started out, both of us, having women in IT, having women in IT was fine, but usually it was just like admin kind of roles.
Yeah.
Certainly not managers.
No.
There was hardly any.
No, absolutely.
Managers.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I used to go to because it was part of the Omnicom group, and I used to go to the Omnicom group meetings where all the department IT people. Looking back now, I think I was the only woman. I never even realised it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, fast forward to where we are at 2021, it's changed a lot. We've still got a long way to go.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that in a bit. But look at from where you started, one woman surrounded by gazillion guys managing IT and managing people within the IT side and so on, to where you've got to now, which is, you know, CIO of the year, a mentor and so on. It's mind-boggling how one person can go from here to here without actually realising the journey they've taken, because you don't realise the journey you've taken.
I haven't until you just pointed it out to me. I think I just had this thing where I'm like a bit like a rugby player. I got a ball under my arm, I got my head down, and I'm just pushing ahead, you know, pushing, get out of my way. I need to get the job done. And I just have one direction, and I don't really look back. I don't reflect enough, and maybe that's something worth considering. But it's interesting, sort of seeing it mapped out and laid out in front of me like that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So I mean, so you were a manager, an IT manager. Were you managing the people or the infrastructure?
Both.
Wow.
Both.
And that is even like for back then as well. That's huge. That is.
And in fact, there was a really lovely lady called Nicole in our Brussels office, and she was a sort of network administrator to the manager there as well. And she came through a sort of admin function, and I kind of could see in her that I can do this. I'm sure you can. And she was great, and her husband's into IT, so she already had a sort of good knowledge. And when he left, I promoted her to become the manager. And I remember the conversations where they were like, are you sure that she could do this? I was like, well, why can't she? He said, because this guy, he's here in the office all day, every day. Anytime something breaks, he's there and he's on it. And I'm like, yeah, but have you thought about why it breaks?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What
was missing was any kind of change control or rigor and processes around it, which she was good at, I knew, because that was both of our things.
Yeah.
So they took a leap of faith, and we gave her the promotion. And it was literally like everyone was on the first day after he'd gone, like, oh God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It's like, has anything happened? No. Is it all working? Absolutely. Is there a problem? Not at all. And and I think in a way, working with a company that didn't have sort of a technical or engineering corporate massive environment, they didn't know any different. They didn't go, well, you're a woman in tech. They just went, you're doing the job, so you must be capable of doing the job.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
It is, because now, I mean, certainly when I first started out I kind of fell into IT, didn't plan on it happening back in 1994, and I was working in customer services, you know, for the Virgin Media now, but back then it was United Artists, working in customer services, and then within about 6 weeks, taken off the shop floor, so to speak, to be the supervisor. And then I applied for a job in business operations, which is where I really then fell in love with it. You know, and that's where I kind of thought, okay, this is what I like. This is me. I love helping people, and I'm helping people with IT.
Absolutely. It is the thing that I love about IT is it's obviously the creative side for me, but also you're helping people. And especially now with all this amazing stuff that's coming out all the time and showing people how they can do things faster and better. You know, back in the day, there were hundreds of secretaries in a company because you had to organise meetings. Now everyone is their own secretary, know.
Yeah, especially now with everybody working from home as well, you really have to manage your time better.
Yeah, so very much so.
Manage your schedule a lot better. So let me rewind a little bit. So you were at this organisation, you've helped another woman move up because you believed in her abilities that she could do it, and she did. How did you go from there to being the director, the IT director at Telegraph?
I don't know. No, I do know. I never wanted to be the IT director. I never wanted to be at this level. I never wanted to be anywhere near a management team or an exec board or anything like that, because I had seen so many others in that role, of course, all men. I hadn't seen any women at that level. And I just used to look at them and think, God, why do they all have to come in for an 8 o'clock meeting? I'm not coming in for an 8 o'clock meeting. Why are they all sort of sitting there and, making decisions that sound just ridiculous? It felt like a boys' club, really.
Which it was a lot in most organisations, and to be fair, in some organisations it still is.
Still is, exactly. So there was an element of that, but also some of the behaviours and the way they were sort of barking orders at people, and I thought, if that's what it's about, I don't want to do it. So I did kind of hold myself back, and it was. There was a couple of situations that have happened along the way where bosses have never really understood how I was able to get things done, right? Because I am an introvert, I can just get on with stuff and people don't notice what I'm doing, but I can do things in the background and suddenly, ta-da, there it is. And what I was missing was sort of my own PR machine, which I didn't realise till later when I was presented with the idea of creating a personal brand as part of a women in sort of leadership effort that was happening within an organisation. But there was a particular moment for me when I had a coach, and I was given this coach by my boss. When I turned up to see her, she was like, "Great, do you know why you're here?" And I was like, "Yes," and explained it. She went, "It's not what your boss thinks." And I thought, God, the fact that there's a disparity here is really odd. And it transpired we had a parent-child relationship going on. He treated me like his child. I treated him like my parent. Suffice to say, I thought, well, I can't hang around here. This isn't going to work. But I think the key thing really for me was understanding more about myself and who I am. Yeah. Realising that I had lost my voice along the way, and I wasn't sort of going, hello, what's happening here? And as I got into sort of bigger organisations, I almost found myself drowned out a little bit by the noise. So then there was a moment when the Telegraph gave me this amazing opportunity to have a coach, which was directed at sort of middle layer management within the organisation and helping to sort of, I guess it's that PR brand, and to build your confidence at how you could become at the next level, which I just thought, there's no way I'm going to get to that next level. But I really thought it'd be a great opportunity to do it. So I seized it with both hands. And I met the most amazing woman called Vicky Beeching. She's written a book called Undivided. And I learned so much from her for so many different reasons. I learned why I was holding myself back. And I remember her saying to me at the end of this whole coaching arrangement, she said, "Why haven't you done this before?" I said, "Because I haven't really got anything to say, And she said, "I think you've got a lot to say." Yeah. I bet, yes, I do now. I realise that now. But I mean, if you'd have seen my LinkedIn profile back then, I wouldn't have had any image of me. I hardly had. It was just my CV, basically. No information about what I do, who I am. You wouldn't have even known I was a woman because I called myself C. Johnson. Oh, okay. So I hid.
Kind of hiding behind everything, weren't you? You didn't want to be seen.
I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard. I didn't want to be pointed out. I guess for various reasons, that's probably happened to me in my life. It's like, well, don't single me out. Don't make me the odd one out or whatever. So I blended, and that for me was a starting point. And then my boss at the time as well, I learned a lot from him around storytelling. And I talked about this at the Women of Silicon Roundabout talk I did a couple of years ago with Kat Wildman, great friend. Yeah. And he'd just be on the stage going, "Yeah, rah, rah," and everyone going, "Oh, he's amazing." And I'd be like, "But he's telling you all the things that I'm doing, not taking credit for it, but, acknowledging it was me, but the way he said it, I couldn't find a way to say what I do in my job and my role, managing an IT team where, you've got a tech bar logging tickets and fixing things. How do you make that sound amazing?
I know, because it just sounds like, well, you just fix stuff.
Yeah. Turn it off, turn it on again. I hate that.
Oh, I know.
And I just realised that's it. So that it kind of became this sort of mini explosion in my head of that's what I've got to do. And again, I know I bang on about being an introvert, but that was really hard to have that first thing when you go, oh, can I just tell you about this amazing thing that I'm doing, right? It just feels awkward. How do you start that first conversation? And that for me was, again, another real opener, because when I did this talk with Kat at Women's Silicon Roundabout, that's what I was using as an opportunity to talk to women, and they were saying, my role is the same. I don't understand, and it was just giving them the hooks to go, turn it into something. Start with a small thing, practice it, keep saying the same message to several people over and over again until it feels natural.
Do you know what? I've just had a thought. If I'd had a mentor, somebody who inspired me, somebody who saw something in me to develop me even further, would I be doing what I'm doing today? Would I be sitting here having this conversation with you about your life and how you've got to be an IT director? Or would we both be, directors, CEOs of some organization somewhere and having a different kind of conversation?
Yeah. Or would we be on the world stage doing something?
Yeah, definitely. Because there was a lot of inspiring women, and I've met a lot, my managers and supervisors and so on. But I found, when you look back, most of the managers and supervisors back then were in customer service departments, certainly not in the IT departments at all.
No,
that was very, very male orientated. And I had some brilliant bosses as well, like Roger Sims, Nick Sawyer, Roy Farrow, amazing men who, were my bosses and stuff from in the IT areas that I moved into. But I was never technical. People think, oh my God, you're technical. I'm like, no, I'm not. I know how to get things to get technical, but that's about
What is the definition of technical?
Well, that's just it. People, it's sitting there putting the wires together and writing the code.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to technical than
absolutely.
Code.
Absolutely.
Hence you founded Women in Tech, Not Just Code.
Absolutely. But I think there was something else there that you just said that's really interesting, and it just reminded me is that I almost envy the women of today because they have got so many opportunities. I feel sorry for them on the other hand because they're getting bombarded with information that might be hold them back, and it's just like, I can't do it. There's too much pressure on me. The whole Instagram world where, you're sort of the only way to get to tech is if you pose it a certain way on a camera and stuff like that, right? But I think what I've learned along the way is that for me, this whole command and control environment that we grew up in, you did what your bosses tell you. There was no ability to think. There was no ability to be creative. And I guess for me, I found little ways of being sort of, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I remember that first job in the council, people thought I was amazing and creative because I could literally stuff 500 envelopes, staple 3 sheets of paper, stuff 500 envelopes and get it out the door in an hour. And I just worked out a system to be able to do it in a very quick way.
And that's all technology is. It's systems, isn't it?
Systems thinking and systems. Absolutely right.
That's all it is. It's just way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
Get us more effective and efficient, really. It's all about.
Absolutely. So I think moving away from command and control, having much more agility and this whole design thinking as well going on, I think that's what's made people realize that's the different environment we're working in today, and it's a much more fluid place to be rather than hierarchical command and control. And you have you weren't allowed to jump over people. You could only go sideways, and there was a certain way to get up. That's gone in most places.
It was hard going. It's still tough in a lot of ways. We're not going to say it's easy because definitely it's not. But from when we first started out. It was a hard slog to get recognised as a woman in that world. It really, really was. Yeah,
very much so.
Generally speaking, why are you at work so late? You should be at home, feeding family and, And how come you're not working on reception? Because that's what women did. We worked with receptionists and so on.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to anybody, no matter whether male or female. You don't, and I think it's quite important as well that people want to pigeonhole people.
Yes.
You're this, so therefore you should behave and do this.
Yeah.
Right? I'm Indian, I'm Punjabi, I'm Sikh, so therefore I should be at home. I should dress a certain way, look a certain. Well, you know me, I'm the complete opposite of what everybody thinks I should be, and I don't like being pigeonholed because that's a square, and I don't live in a little box.
Yeah.
Right? I'm colourful. I want to do stuff.
Yeah.
So
and that's really interesting, and you've just reminded me as well of a conversation when I first. So my boss left, and we talked about my journey through to become IT director. My boss left, and I was made an interim director. Because it was just at the point where a new CIO was coming in, so I was an interim director, and that was a time for me. I was thinking, oh gosh, what, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But I was kind of given a mentor within that structure of another of the directors, a really, really lovely guy, and he sat me down and asked me what kind of director did I want to be, and I brilliant question.
Yeah.
And I thought at the time, well, what do you mean? He said, well, are you a super technical director? Are you a process director? Are you a people director? What kind of director you want to be? And I said, well, I have got a technical background, but one of the things I know is that I have been challenged quite often by some of my colleagues for not being technical enough. And I know enough, because it's systems thinking, I know enough to work out when I'm being, someone's trying to pull the wool over my eyes.
Yeah.
But what I really get drawn to, and what I love about the job that I do, and again, sort of talking to you now, reflecting on it, is I want to help people.
Yeah.
And I really believe in sort of people coaching within your teams. I really believe in understanding behaviours. I really believe in this command and control thing held me back for years because I tried to follow that model. And the moment I realised I didn't have to do it, and I could be the kind of leader that I wanted to be and the kind of IT director that I wanted to be, the shackles are off. I do what I want. I am who I am.
Yeah.
And it works. So I'm happy with it. But that was such a powerful question.
Yeah. It is, because how often do you get asked, if you get any role, right? Anybody's employing anybody. And like with me, IT service manager, the roles I've had.
Yeah.
I was never asked, what kind of IT service manager do you want to be? It was like, here's a job description, here's a role.
Yeah. And this is what I want you to do.
Yeah. It is that. It's that we hire people because they have the skills, the know-how, the experience, the capabilities, this whole wealth of knowledge. Yeah. And then we tell them what we want them to do.
I don't hire for the technology skills, right? Because I'm assuming the HR companies have done their job and I'm being presented with somebody who can do that job technically. I'm looking for people who can bring something to the table. I'm looking for their path that they've been on. What have they done that means they could turn their hand to anything, right? Because it's a challenging environment, difficult situations happen all the time. I've worked with people who have just been, chasing exams all the time, but when it comes to actually doing the job, they can't do it. And therefore, I'm not interested in that part. I'm interested in you as a person. First thing I ask is when I have my 15 minutes with Carol and a last round of interviews is, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
I don't even look at the CV because I know everyone else has done that bit for me. I want to know about who you are as a person.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there's a job that I went for and I got to the fourth interview, which is the final one. And I had two people in the room. One of them, if I got the job, would have been my manager, and the other one was the lady from HR. Then the third person was on, this is before video calling, it was on conference call.
Yeah.
Okay, and this guy was in Europe somewhere, I can't remember where. So he was the head of. So he was interviewing me stuff. And we got to the last question, and the question was, so, Manjeet, tell me why I should hire you. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake, this question again.
Yes.
I turned it round on him and I said, you know what? This is the fourth interview and this is the final stage. You obviously have seen something in me. You think I'm right for the role, which is why I'm here. So why don't you tell me why I should work for you?
Good question.
I just turned it around on him and I literally just said that. I said, so why don't you tell me why I should come and work for you? And you know, his answer was, can you start on Monday?
Brilliant.
And that was it.
Yeah.
So it's like that age-old question. I'm down to the 4th interview.
Yeah.
If you don't know by now, then, you know.
Yeah. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Who knows? Things move so fast. Yeah. 2 years would be a good thing, right?
Yeah. And then you get then you know, it's drummed into you, or tell them you want to be in their job, or I don't want to be my manager's job. I didn't want to be in the HR person's job. I didn't know where I wanted to be back then. I just knew I liked the job that was explained to me.
Yeah.
And I knew I could make something of it, which I did.
Yeah.
So
I remember, actually, it's quite funny, but and it just reminds me of, you know, one of the things that always is a challenge is women look at a job description and go, you know, I can only do 30-40% of that job. I can't do all the rest of it, so I'm not going to apply. You know, it's the age-old thing we all know about. Yeah. And I remember a friend of mine, when I told him I'd got this job, and he said, the newspaper. I said, yeah. He said, you mean you'd be responsible for the paper getting printed every day? And I went, well, yeah, I guess I will, yeah. Are you sure you can do that?
Oh, my God.
It's like, well, I hadn't thought I couldn't. And I don't, yeah, I'm sure it'd be fine. It's just a system at the end of the day. But it was just really, you know,
but isn't it telling, though, it's other people's limitations or limited expectations of us as individuals that we don't actually think about. As soon as somebody says it, if you're not strong as an individual, then that's going to seep in. Yeah. And you're going to start like thinking, oh, maybe I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Strong as an individual.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so what have you done at the paper since you've been there? What changes have you brought about?
Oh, lots. Well, the whole digital thing has happened since the time I joined, you know. You know, we were one of the first companies to go with Google. So we've been running on it 12 plus years, which is amazing. And change processes. I was the process queen. And this is the bit that I think it's kind of reflective of the change in me in that last 10 years, for example. I was brought in as a process queen. They needed process. They didn't have incident, problem and change. You know, change management was turn up with a list, fill in this sheet. And yeah, sounds fine. Go for it. And we used to have so much little things going wrong. And I'd ask people and go, well, what happened? They go, oh, I don't know. Have you touched anything? Well, yeah. But what did you touch? Well, I had to fix something. Well, what did you have to fix? Why did you have to fix it? You know, and it's just no one was thinking in that way. And I think I got hated for probably quite some time because I put in this change management process. Yeah. And I remember I said, right, I don't want you to read your change management process, your change request. I want you to read the person's next to you. Right? Yeah. So they started reading it and they couldn't read it because it's like, it made no sense to them. So then I'd say to the person next to them, are you happy with that change? I don't know what they've just said. Right. Yeah. Okay. So how are we going to approve that change if you don't know what he said and he doesn't even understand what he's reading? And that was that was a very torturous day. But actually it was my birthday as well and I missed my lunch. But that was like a real gadunk moment for people. Yeah. That you can't just make that, oh, it'd be fine because we'll always do what we've always done, low risk and all the rest of it. So change management was a process that I put in place and made that robust. But then interestingly, I had to change it again a few years later when sort of the digital stuff came in and they're trying to create products, you know, in a different way. Whereas I came from an enterprise IT background, whereas you put it in and you don't touch it for 4 years until you need to touch it again to upgrade it, right? Yeah. Whereas now we're going, what do you mean you're changing it? You only changed it 2 days ago. Why are you changing it again? Yeah. And I really got challenged about that because what happened is my process became a blocker. People found ways to circumvent it because why would I want to sit there and go through all this level of detail? And it was like, yeah, I can see that. So then having to dissect it and go, what is the actual theme that's most important to understand this change? And it purely comes down to the risk and the timing of it.
I have to agree with you on that because I used to be a change manager in one of my many roles that I've held over the years. And people start to see the change management function, because it
Yeah.
usually is in a lot of organizations, the change management as a function, as a blocker,
Yeah.
as total bureaucracy. I don't know why I have to fill these stupid forms in. But then, you know what? I think it's up to the people who are running that section, that department, to look at what they're doing and the way that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And certainly one of the organizations where I worked, we literally looked at the change management documentation, and the amount of dross that we wanted people to fill in was ridiculous. It was like
reams and reams.
Yeah, it's like, why? What's the bare minimum that we need?
Yeah.
And that's what we stripped it all the way back from being like 4 or 5, pages down to about 2.
Yeah.
And that was just minimum. That this was for like really intricate network changes and so on, infrastructure changes. So, stripped it all the way back. But what we did, we didn't just strip it back. We actually spoke to the people who are going to be A, doing the changes, and B, providing the information for the changes. And then when you do that, that's when you get the real piece that works in the middle, because you've brought your stakeholders into it.
Yeah, very much so. And it's making sure as well that there's a real understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And particularly now, you've got continuous integration and things like that. Where is your change control? And for me, I'm again, this has helped evolve me as a person, because I am uber risk averse. I'm not going to do anything unless I know it's absolutely perfect and spot on.
Yeah.
You can't afford to be like that, because you'll never get anything done. It's another way of holding yourself back. And so now I'm making decisions about things that years ago I'd have gone, I can't make a decision about that because it hasn't got the I's dotted, and the T's crossed. When I'm going, okay, I can be pragmatic because I've understood what you've done. I've understood the how you're going to deal with that issue, the risk that's going to happen, what your mitigation factors are. And when we're looking at continuous integration and automation, it doesn't matter where that information is stored.
Yeah.
As long as there's a track of something that you could see the red or green flag status against it, let it happen, and you can make it work. And it is really back to that command and control, maybe risk averse, right? It's the fear. And a lot of my career challenges have been as a result of fear through that command and control management.
Yeah. So you're like running this amazing organization. Okay. How did the mentoring happen? Because let me look at my list here. You're a mentor for women in technology in a mentoring program, a mentor at Amazon Web Services, founder and leader volunteer Tech for Everyone Schools program. You won the award, as I said earlier, Women in IT Excellence Award 2018. I read an article that you did as well about challenges, dilemma and decisions, unexpected lessons of website building with school children. I mean, how do you go from being a CIO, from being a director, to being a mentor?
Well, that came about purely by accident, right? Which is another. Talk about flipping everything on its head. When I moved into the role of IT director, it suddenly dawned on me that I'm going to be looked at as a role model.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a daunting prospect when you don't really know what kind of role model you are. And I remember the CIO arranged for a women in tech event. So we got our recruitment partners in and we had this event, and I was asked to be on the panel. And I'm like, oh my God, A, I don't do this sort of stuff anyway. And B, I'm not a feminist. I'm not a burn your bra kind of woman. I just get on with the job. Why do I have to do this? Right. I didn't really see a need because I hadn't acknowledged what I had been through. As I said, I had never looked back. I was always looking forward. And I remember this panel. It was quite funny. And people were saying things on this panel, and I just felt this voice coming from within me because I totally disagreed with everything that they were saying about how to do things and the rest of it, because it was not my experience, or it's not what I felt from just my own sort of circle of people that I've been with. And I almost became the anti-panelist because every time they say so, well, actually, I think there's a different way you could do it, and this is a different opportunity. And I remember my boss saying to me afterwards, wow, that was amazing. And do you think we should do this again? I was like, yeah, it was great. I said, but I'm not going to do it. But then I went away and I thought about it, and I thought, no, I think this is what I do need to do.
Yeah.
And so I literally, that became a platform, and I started going to other events just because I could get sort of gauge what these things were all about.
Mm-hmm.
I started a sort of an employee resource group for it internally. So then it was like a little coffee afternoon almost, you know, and it started from there. So Women in Tech Not Just Co started almost from within that space where I'd get my managers along and a few other members of the team, mostly men, of course, and then a load of women would come along, and we'd just have coffee and cake and a few biscuits that I'd bribe them with to turn up, plant a few questions. Yeah. And just chatted about my experiences about why it's important that we have allies, why it's important for the men to understand some of the challenges women have, and for the women to understand some of the challenges that the men might have as well in handling these situations. Right? Yeah, it's a two-way thing.
Key. Absolutely. I think that's quite key, because it's very easy just to look down why women. Yeah. You know, but then we need to understand from a male perspective things. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we need to understand it from a male perspective as well.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you don't have that balance. You get this constant seesaw going on.
Yeah, and there was a really great element where one of my direct reports was actually in the process of recruiting. He said, I've just realised I've got to go and look at that job description because I suspect it's full of bias and I haven't made it very friendly for somebody who's only going to look at 40% of it to apply. And for me, that was just like a, wow. I did not expect that. Mm-hmm. I hadn't really appreciated some of these things, but being able to use myself as a sort of a vessel and a voice to share that knowledge without banging the drum going, you must do this, you know, and all the rest of it. I was taking everybody on a journey. Mm-hmm. And so one of the first sort of proper sessions we had, we would talk about what challenges. We had a whole load of post-it notes. What are the challenges? What do you want to see happen? We would talk about the pipeline. We were talking about working mothers. We were talking about carers. We were talking career development, mentoring. So I took all of that, and the first thing I ended up doing was the Technology for Everyone project. And myself and Kat Waldman, we started this little project together, and I took this to the HR team. We have a really great guy, Phil Hammond, who does the sort of outreach bits and pieces. I mean, he normally does things like the Golf Society and the choir, but I know he also does these days where you can go as an individual to schools and do projects. I said, I want to do it as a team. And it was the first time it'd ever been done. We met with a load of schools. One school was just so lovely over in Clapham and just said, yeah, we'll go for it. I had never done anything like this in my life. I had never walked in. Well, I hadn't walked into a classroom since I left at 16. Yeah. And there I started to go, yeah, we can do all of this stuff. And we basically took, for me, the pipeline issue is not with where we're at in terms of today and you know the higher education. It's where you start at the early years. Yeah. How do youngsters, and particularly those who are coming from backgrounds that aren't even in this sphere of working, right? And I guess that's where my own background reminded me. I never saw these opportunities. I never knew they existed. No one spoke to me about university because there was no way that was going to happen. So therefore, if you can't impart that knowledge to the younger generation and see possibilities, you got nowhere to go.
See, I think it's really important as well that what you recognise was to put back, you know, so that, like you just said, that children from the same kind of background from where you grew up, they say, well, look, this is possible. I've done it. This is possible. You can do it. You need to apply yourself, you know, find your passion, find your purpose and go for it. Yeah. And it's really important that we do put back into society, because as individuals we've got a lot
we have
to reach back down and give somebody else a hand back up. I think is everybody's calling.
I think so. And you know, and again, you know, being in the schools, the teachers aren't going to be able to say, oh, a business analyst role is this, you know, a digital product manager is this. They are so far removed because they've got a curriculum to work towards. So what we did is we basically helped them build a website, a digital, and they even started doing things like podcasts, etc. And we did it in a fun way. We built the podcast. We showed them how to use the iPhones or the iPads for, you know, recording. We got them to type up various bits and pieces. We gave them interviewing skills. We did so many things to make it a fun exercise. But we also then used things like Kanban boards and doing these scrums as well, and using the different teams to work together. So they realised it wasn't an individual project, it was a team project. We had project managers assigned, we had all these different roles, and it was the most wonderful experience. Everybody who was involved in that was just, I can't explain it, but 6 weeks going in every Tuesday thinking, what are we doing? How are we going to get through this? But we did. And the reward was when they came into the offices and we gave a little tour of the offices, so they could, everything that they had done, they could see in real life. So it was amazing.
Imagine their eyes huge.
Absolutely incredible. They met the editor, they met the CIO, we gave them certificates, and I remember the editor sitting on the stage talking to the editors from the project team. And they were able to ask him questions because they knew what the job was, and he was able to reply, and they understood what he was. It was
amazing. It was fantastic.
Beautiful. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Really, and that for me, we all kind of came away from there almost deflated, but there was a moment of, nobody could quite pin the words or pin what this feeling was.
Yeah.
And it's altruism. Yeah. And that will live with me forever, that moment, that feeling, not just for the school, but for the teachers, for some of the parents as well who got involved, said, I've never seen my kids so excited. It was incredible. I think I might go into IT now. But my work colleagues, just the joy and emotion it gave them to do that project.
Yeah.
So it kind of snowballed from there, and then I got invited to do other things through, I tell people about the story of what I'd done. They go, oh, we're doing this mentoring program. Would you like to get involved? I did the mentoring programs for the schools for Amazon, which was incredible, seeing these young girls building products that then are going to market. And then seeing them, and one of the awards we went to, Women in Tech Awards, there they were on the stage talking about it, and literally everybody's drawers around the whole room, hundreds and hundreds of people was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Beautiful moments.
Well, it just shows where the next generations are going, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, really does.
So how did you get to, what was the reason behind Women in Tech, not just code? Because that's where I met you.
Yeah, well,
you know what? I walked into the Telegraph building and I was a bit like those kids. I was like, I'm in the Telegraph building. I was looking around all over the place. I never thought I'd go anywhere like that. And it is a beautiful building. And everybody was really friendly. And I had an amazing evening there when I met you. But what was the reason behind setting that up?
It's kind of all the things we've just been talking about, all culminating together. I still felt like there was something missing. And I, from being someone who didn't want to go to conferences and networking events because, no, that's just not what I do, to then deliberately going to these events and then trying to work out, well, where do I fit in, right? I totally got the whole STEM we've got to get kids and particularly girls into STEM. I wasn't in STEM. We've got to get them on computer science degrees. I didn't do a computer science degree. It's all about the code. Tech is only seen as tech and coding. Coding and development. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, but I feel like I have quite an important role to play in technology. And I'm thinking, well, we're all talking about the pipeline being an issue. I'm dealt with it at the school side of things, and and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see more businesses going into schools to help do that. I feel like that's something that all businesses should do. But we're still missing something at the other end of it. And when we did the Women of Silicon Roundabout talk, there were so many women who came up to me. It was like watching the Pied Piper was coming down the stairs to the stand that I was on, wanting to ask questions. And so many of them said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was working in tech, because I'm not a developer or coder. And it was that kind of culmination of even my colleagues on the stand who go, I've been doing products for years and I didn't realize I'm in tech. I just do product. And it was like, that's it. Because I'm sick of going anywhere and being told you have to be this, you have to be that, or going to events that are women in tech events and still feeling excluded. Before it was because I was the only woman in the room. Now I'm the only non-coder in the room. And there was something missing. And therefore, if you don't bring everybody on this journey with you, if you don't make sure, because I have seen, the key thing for me is transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
You've got transferable skills. I've got transferable skills. I have seen people move from sales and marketing into coding because they understand the product, because they've sold it. Now they want to build the product. And I have seen the flip happen. So if we only focus on this tiny, tiny proportion of tech, which is a very important piece, but it is so much bigger. We are missing out, and we are doing a disservice to the women in that role, right? There are hundreds upon thousands of women in, this kind of middle layer of work are overlooked, misunderstood, and feel like they don't have a place in technology. Well, I'm not having that.
No, I totally agree with you, because, you and I have been in that place where we were totally misunderstood.
Yeah.
I was one of the few women IT service managers, but actually we make brilliant service managers. Why? Because we're flipping good at building rapport and building relationships.
Yeah.
And we can get to that. I'm not saying that men can't, but generally speaking, women are good at that, building those relationships, getting to the crux of it and not being gung-ho about it and so on. I loved being a service manager. I thrived on it, to be given an account, as I used to get given, it's broken, we're going to give it to Manjeet because she can fix it. To be given an account that was ready to walk out the door, and just to put together service improvement plans and so on, and then have them not leave but re-sign for 5 to 10 years. It was like, I had something to do with it. It wasn't all entirely me, but I had a lot to do with it. And you can't, it's like a badge of honor that I can do this and I have done it. It's because I'm good at it.
Yeah, very much so. And there's that whole layer is missing. It's misunderstood, and therefore how are we developing those careers? That's one of the reasons why the first sort of event that I ran after the launch was the spotlight on the BA. And until COVID had come along, I was planning to do lots more. Spotlight on the product manager, spotlight on service management, because
I'd have been right there on that one.
but where do you go for this information? Right?
There's nothing.
There's nothing.
There is nothing out there.
But there is now. I just need to.
Listen, I know you well enough to know where there's a will, there's a Carol. Carol is going to make it happen. Where there's a shortage, where there's a lack of highlighting what women can achieve in IT and not just code, I know you're going to bang the drum from the highest mountain, so that women do wake up and realise they are in IT and their worth and their value.
Absolutely.
As women, we undervalue ourselves.
It's such an incredible career path. And what I like about it is it's never dull. No 2 days are the same. You get involved with so much. You can move into so many other areas by accident. So many women I've talked to, it's by accident. Being in the right place at the right time, showing up, showing willing.
Mine was purely by accident. It wasn't planned. I just wanted to work nearer home, and that's how I got into it, and that was it. And I haven't looked back since. You know what, Carol, we could talk.
I have this effect on people.
We could keep talking on this subject for I don't know how long, but we've got to cut it short, unfortunately. I say short, it's a long short, shall we say.
That's okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. There was so much more that I wanted to ask you, but we'll have to do a part 2 at some point.
We will.
And just to bring everything smack bang up to date.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and being an inspired guest. I really, really appreciate it. And one day soon, I'm going to be able to do that.
Yes.
We'll be able to see each other again.
Yeah, definitely. I've really enjoyed it. I really appreciate you asking me to come along. It's been quite a kind of nice way to look back on memory lane and reflect on things and go, wow.
Yeah.
This is how I got here.
No, I'm really pleased. And the way I see it is, inspired women inspire women. So, and inspired people go on to inspire other people. And you are an inspiring person. So thank you for inspiring me. And everybody who's listening will be inspired by something that you've said. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as we certainly have. And I will see you next time. Take care.